All right, so we are beginning section 6. You need to make sure you're ready to go. So pause the video if you need to get set up, but remember, be an active participant. Pause when needed, pause when you're supposed to do some problems, pause when something that I said was going too fast, or if you need just some processing time. Again, be an active participant as you're watching this section. This current standard, we're going to jump back right now to the properties of algebra, the properties of numbers. In the last section, we talked about the commutative property and the associative property. But in this one, we're going to focus strictly on the distributive property. Okay, so that's right here with this standard. We can apply these properties to help us create equivalent expressions. If I look at where we are, we're bouncing back to this one just for this one special, very important property. And then we have one section left. We've already done section 5, so we'll have one more section, and then it's test time coming up real soon. So let's focus right on this one right now. I'm going to remind you about the order of operations. Those are always something that we've got to consider. Okay, the steps to solving a problem with multiple operations. So it's kind of remembered with this right here. Sometimes people say it's, that they might say this is a G for grouping symbols, but then the other things kind of still are in order. But this is a very common way to help us remember it. So let's start with the first set of instructions. Simplify the following expressions by following the order of operations. So if I look at this right here, I know I start with parentheses, okay? We're based on that right there. Start with your parentheses. So do 3 plus 9 first. We get 12, so essentially 6 times 12. And if we do that, we get 72. So that's kind of where we're starting, all right? What I want you to do is do 2 and 3 on your own. I want you to pause the video when you get done with those 2 and 3, and then come back and we'll pick it back up. All right, check your work. You should have gotten 55 for this one, and you should have gotten 8 for this one. If not, double check your work. But that leads us into the next question. How is this expression different? Brainstorm how this problem could be simplified. Well, there's something in that problem that we now have to pay attention to, and it's this right here. The variable has replaced a number. The process could still remain the same though. So if we look at this, now we have a variable, so we've got to pay attention to that. If you haven't yet written that sentence down, pause and do so. But we're going to talk about this the rest of the way, so pay attention as we go along here, please. All right, the distributive property allows us to multiply each term inside parentheses by the number that's outside the parentheses. We can multiply everything inside by what's outside. Now, algebraically, we would say that like this. There's something outside and there's 2 numbers that might be added inside, or they could even be subtracted inside. But if this was algebra, if I was summarizing this, I would say this. What's outside times both of the things inside. So A times B plus A times C. Or if I was subtracting, it would just change the operation. A times B minus A times C. Now we're going to make sense of this, but we're just kind of looking at what really is going on with using those variables there. We have to be careful with our signs when multiplying positives and negatives. Sometimes that plays in. It'll play in a little bit today. Now, if I look at an example, like if I was doing this, I could add these together and say it's really just 2 times 7, which is 14. But you also want to understand that if you multiply what's outside by each of the things inside, 2 times 4, I get 8. 2 times 3, I get 6. 8 plus 6 is also 14. And that's helpful to know because, again, like before, sometimes you're dealing with variables here, okay? Another example right here, if I give the 4 to each of the things inside, that's 4 times 8, 32, plus 4 times 3, 12. That's another way to solve this. Aside from just doing 4 times 11, it also gives me another way to think about this that simplifies the problem. So these are just some kind of key points as we get going. Again, this is kind of the algebra form of it. All right, so that's kind of what the distributive property is all about. If you need to just pause and think about that a little bit more, that would be wise. But let's go to the next slide. Number 4. Each of the 4 members of the Robinson family ordered a drink, 2 slices of pizza, and an ice cream cone. Now you can see they're using variables here to represent drink, pizza, and ice cream cone. So if we were doing this right here, there was 4 people and they all got this. So distribute and write an expression to represent that order. We could say, 4 drinks, 8 pieces of pizza, and 4 ice cream cones, because everybody got 1 of these, 2 of these, 1 of these, and there was 4 people. So we're just kind of summarizing what's going on right there. Now, we could also use the area model to show distribution. Like if I look at this right here, I could do 5 times 3x. Well, 5 and 3 is 15, so if I just attach an x there, that'd be 15x. 5 times 3x, 15x. If I do this corner and this corner, well, that's 5 times 2, which is 10, okay? So if I think about this, 5 times the sum of 3x and 2, this is kind of like a rectangle now, and I've got a length and a width, but this side is 3x plus 2. I could distribute that and say that's the same essentially as 15x plus 10. Again, that's kind of where these came from. If I look at another example right here, well, 7 times x would just be 7x. And 7 times negative 9, well, it's going to be a negative 63. Now, sometimes they throw negatives at you, not too often at this level, but they sometimes do. So if I think about this is kind of like 7 times x minus 9 on that side. And when I distribute, I get what's in red above right there. So these are ways to distribute. That's kind of a fancier way of thinking about it. We're going to talk more about that as we go. All right, number 6 and 7 and 8 and 9, use the distributive property to simplify the expressions below. Well, again, I can't really solve my parentheses because I don't know the value of x, but I can distribute. I can do 2 times x plus 2 times 6. So I would say that's the expanded form, 2 times x plus 2 times 6. Now, simplest form would be me solving and taking that further. Well, what if I kind of just get rid of those multiplication signs and actually do something with them? That would be 2x, and that would be 12. Now, I got to stop there because I can't go any further. I can't add these because this one has an x and that one doesn't, and they're different terms, so I'm not allowed to combine them yet. So I stop there, 2x plus 12. That's as far as I can go. If I look at number 8, if I distribute the 8 with the 7 and then the g, well, 8 times 7 would be the first thing I'd do to distribute. And then 8 times g would be the second thing I want to multiply to distribute. And since I'm subtracting here, I would subtract those quantities, 8 times 7 minus 8 times g. Now I can take this a little further. 8 times 7 I know is 56. And 8 times g, well, I would just say 8g. Again, this is where I stop though, because this one has a variable attached and that one doesn't. So I stop, I say good job, and I move on. Now what I want you to do, I want you to go ahead and try 7 and 9, and I'll leave these up as an example if it helps to see those steps again. But try 7 and 9 and then restart it when you're done. All right, check 7 and 9, see how you did. Make sure you've got the expanded form first and then simplest form after that. And the same thing for number 9, just first expand it and then simplify that a little bit, okay? So again, remember, what's outside multiplied by each of the terms inside. That's what's going on with our distributive property. Now, numbers 10 through 18, they want us to distribute the coefficient in each expression below. Don't get lost by this word coefficient. It's usually the first number outside. That's the 5, that's the 3, that's the 4, that's the 6, okay? Those are the coefficients for what we're trying to multiply. So if I do 5 times 3x And then if I do 5 times 10, here's what I get. I get 5 times 3x plus 5 times 10. Now I can take that further. 5 times 3x is 15x. I just attach the variable. And then 5 times 10 I know is 50. And again, I stop there. I don't go further and say that this is 65x because that's not true. We don't know that for a fact. So we stop here. Now, that's just number 10. I want you to try 11 through 18 and come back when you're done and see how you do. All right, check your work. There's, let's see, 8 problems for you to check, so it might be helpful to pause and see how you did, but you should have expanded the form first and then simplified that. That's what I have 2 steps for in each box. I should see 2 steps in each of your problems there as well. Okay, pause if you need to see your work, because I'm going to move on now. So the summary for this right here is what you want to write down now. The distributive property says that multiplying a number by a group of numbers added together is the same as doing each multiplication separately. For instance, if the example here is 3 times 2 plus 4, that's the same as 3 times 2 plus 3 times 4. So if I figure this out, and then combine those, I really have what we were starting with, which was 3 times 6 in essence, okay? So this would be 18, and if I did it this way, that would be 6 plus 12, which is also 18. So we want to be able to distribute because sometimes you deal with variables and you've got to be able to handle variables when it comes to distribution. So that is the summary right there. If you need more time, pause the screen. All right, so the homework sheet that goes with this one looks like this. I want to kind of give you a sample to start with though, so let's do one together. If I look up here at number 1, what they want me to do is distribute this and then connect it over here with what it goes with. So if I think of this up here, I know 5 times 3 is 15. So I'm just going to write that down here. That's 15. And I know 5 times that x. That'd be 5x. So I really am looking at this when I distribute, okay? So that's what this really distributes to, 5 times 3, 15. 5 times x, 5x. And I want to subtract. Now where I see that over here is I see that right there. Okay, so what they do now is I connect those 2 lines with a straight line. And in so doing, I've ruled out a few letters here. Because if I keep doing this for each of these problems, if I connect this wherever it goes and this wherever it goes, I'm crossing off some letters as I go. But at the end, there will be a few letters that haven't been crossed off. And what they want you to do, if you look back at the directions, after all the questions have been completed, unscramble the remaining letters, the ones that haven't been crossed off, to form the name of a mystery person. And that is what the assignment kind of does to finish it off right there. That's why you'll have a few letters left over and see if you can unscramble those. All right, that goes with this assignment.